Okay, testing. There we go. I realized just after I hit start that my mic wasn't actually picking up in the OBS, so had to fix that real quick. Anyhow, let's see. I don't think anybody's here yet, but if anybody watches in the future, hello. I am doing something different, maybe. Experimental, shall we say. I don't know if it's going to be of any interest at all to anyone but me, but I have found something. I think somebody's popped in. I have found something called Twine, and it is basically a program that you can either run in your browser or you can download for free, and you can create these sort of nested choice trees of text, and there's some editing abilities and stuff if you can do anything HTML. I cannot, but they also have some nice little buttons, so that has helped me along immensely. That being said, I am not doing a lot with formatting. I am just kind of doing the here's one thing, it leads to another thing, and sometimes it can split in different paths. Now, this can get really wild and tangled if you do enough splits. For right now, I just have 3 very simple trees with one minor deviation that kind of goes right back in at the bottom of one of them. And they are fairy tales. Specifically, 3 very simple fairy tales. I've got Red Riding Hood, I've got the Frog Prince, and I've got Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, the goal of what we're doing right now is very simple. I've broken these things up into little bite-sized chunks that go down the tree. And at various points, you can stop me and go, hey, what if instead of going down this path, we do something different? For example, if I click on Little Red Riding Hood, we get the basic start of the story. Once there was a sweet little girl who was loved by everybody, and most especially by her grandmother, who doted on her and sewed her a beautiful red cape and hood. The girl adored this gift and soon went everywhere wearing it, so that people came to call her Little Red Riding Hood. Right now, there is only one way forward, and that is just to continue the story as it is. However, you could potentially go, what if something else was the case here? In this case, it's not so much what happens next that changes as maybe some of the basic information. For example, there are actual existing variants of Little Red Riding Hood that are little Golden Hood, because the hood and cape is gold instead of red. Fun thing about at least one of those that I've read is that it actually has like magical protective properties, and that's how she survives the wolf attack later. But I digress. We can continue on, and we can get through, yep, she gets the basket, here's some little cakes, here's some butter in some stories, wine in others, and told, hey, your grandmother's feeling sick. Go and take these to her. Stay on the path, don't deviate from it, and, be on your best behavior. So, the grandmother lives about half an hour's walk away in another village through the woods. And you get to the woods as Little Red Riding Hood, and a wolf approaches her. Okay, a wolf has approached her. What happens next? Or does something different happen here? If we go next and continue on, the wolf is clever. It knew that there are woodcutters working not too far away. If the wolf does anything to upset this little child, then the woodcutters are definitely going to hear and come running. We can't have that. So, the wolf puts on his best behavior. He's kind, he's polite. Good day, how are you? He engages in conversation, strolls along beside her, so that she doesn't recognize this is a wolf, this is a predator or a problem. She's never really met one before. He asks, well, where are you going? What are you doing with that basket? And she very innocently replies, I'm going to my grandmother's. Bringing her some cakes and some wine so that she feels better. She's a little bit sick right now. The wolf, of course, continues to compliment and be kind. You don't have very far to walk, do you? Oh no, she is in the very first house, just outside the village. It's about half an hour's walk from here. And the wolf usually takes one of a couple of paths. In some versions, he will say, "Hey, I know these woods fairly well. Do you want to have a race? There are 2 paths that I know will lead to your grandmother's house. You take one, I take the other. Whoever gets there first wins." And of course, he takes the faster path. In others, he suggests instead, "Oh, why don't you pick some flowers for your grandmother? Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't she like that?" And of course, the flowers are all growing off the path. So Little Red Riding Hood disobeys her mother's instruction to stay on the path and to not dawdle about. And she goes and picks some flowers. You know, in the manner of little children and some adults everywhere. You see one thing, you go to it. Then you see another thing just a little further on, so you go to that. And then another. And then another. Of course, the wolf hightails it straight towards the grandmother's house. He knows exactly where she lives. He knows that she's alone. He knows that she is not feeling well and is confined to her bed. He also knows that Little Red is supposed to come and visit her. So they part ways. The wolf gets there first. Of course, he knows to fake Little Red Riding Hood's voice when the grandmother calls through the door, "Who is it?" She tells him how to enter, how to unlatch or unlock the door, as case may be. So he lets himself in and pounces. In the milder stories, he swallows her whole. There are some very dark variations, which we shall not get into here, but I have a link to the sources I have for multiple of these stories in the description of this video. You can follow it. You can find Little Red Riding Hood, I think under R for Red Riding Hood, and then you can read all of them there. There are some very, very dark versions. But the wolf disguises himself as the grandmother, gets into the bed, and waits. And of course, eventually, Little Red finishes picking flowers and turns up. Knock, knock. Who is it? And the grandmother being sick, actually in some stories, is specifically cited as the reason why Little Red doesn't quite cotton on to the wolf's voice being different. You know, when you're sick, your voice sometimes does a little bit of this. And that's not too difficult to fake or to sound off. So, Little Red comes in. The wolf invites her over. And of course, you have the classic, what big arms you have, the better to hold you with. What big eyes you have, the better to see you with. What big teeth you have, the better to eat you with. The wolf gulps down Little Red Riding Hood, just like her grandmother. Now, this is a lot for one wolf to handle, so he lays down and has a little after-dinner nap. At this point, usually a huntsman or a woodsman passes by and notices something off. Comes in and finds the wolf, which he recognizes instantly. Now, again, the kinder stories here say that because, in the manner of fantasy and fairy tales, because the wolf swallowed these 2 whole, they can be saved. They weren't actually eaten. There are some, again, somewhat darker stories where this is it for them. They are gone. And it is a cautionary tale where the protagonist does not get out of it at the end. But we're doing a kinder version here. That being said, if we want to acknowledge some of the darker ones, we could always divert the path. He wondered if perhaps the old woman could still be saved. Of course she can. Or create a new path and say, that's not realistic. And in that path, it won't be. So as an example of this, That was right around where the huntsman comes in. Right about here. So, we've got this particular tree here. Into the house he came. Perhaps the old woman could be saved. So, let's just go ahead and change the double arrow to... it's worth a try, at least. That goes on to the path that we were basically continuing along. Or, that only happens in fairy tales. And we create a sub-direction. Now, that is now going over here, and I am just going to scatter it off to this side, because it's going to get a little wild otherwise. So that only happens in fairy tales. What happens in that case? Let's see. The huntsman shakes his head. The grandmother is lost to them. There's no surviving a wolf's belly. All he can do now is avenge her. Once we have that, this hasn't been changed yet, but we can just kind of close it out, go back to the new version of this, and hit test from here. Gulping down 2 people within an hour is a heavy thing even for a wolf's stomach, so he immediately laid back down to take a nap and sleep off the meal. However, the wolf hadn't thought to close the door after Little Red Riding Hood, and it just so happened that a passing huntsman who knew the old lady saw the door swinging ajar and wondered if something was wrong. Into the house he came, knocking and calling softly, and when he saw the wolf he recognized it instantly, even wearing the grandmother's nightdress. He also saw the wolf's bulging belly and wondered if perhaps the old woman could still be saved. It's worth a try, at least. The huntsman went quietly over and, with his knife, began to cut the wolf's belly open. Soon he saw a bit of red, and out popped Little Red Riding Hood. The huntsman kept cutting, and soon he saw white, and out popped the grandmother. Once the 2 were safe, the huntsman took some heavy stones, filled the wolf's belly with them, and sewed him right back up again. Then he sat by the head of the bed and waited. When the wolf awoke, it was to the worst bellyache of his life. Groaning, he opened his eyes, and who should he see first but the huntsman, sitting there with his knife and bow. The wolf, terrified, immediately leapt up and ran, but the belly full of stones was so heavy that its weight threw him to the ground and killed him immediately. Let's go back. We have another path to take. That only happens in fairy tales. The huntsman shakes his head. The grandmother is lost to them. There's no surviving a wolf's belly. All he can do now is avenge her. And we would potentially continue this until the end. But for now, that is the basic structure of Twine. The very, very basics. So, to the end of this, if you're out there, if you're able to put something in the chat, anything like that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the storybook shelf here. I'm going to hit test from here. Where would you like to start? And at what point would you like me to stop? Little Red Riding Hood, The Frog Prince, Jack and the Giant Beanstalk. I'll give a moment. I know YouTube has its little bit of latencies. And it takes time to type. Assuming that anyone is out there and able to type at the moment. If not, in the meantime, I can just go ahead and go back here and continue to write the unfortunate end. Alright, let's see. All he can do now is avenge her. There we go. So the thing I just did there was I looped it into the end title card that I made for specifically Little Red Riding Hood, and it's specifically Little Red Riding Hood, an end for each story rather, because each one has an option to go back to the start of that specific story and try some different paths perhaps, or to go back to the shelf in general. So there is that. Alright, if no strong preferences, I'm going to take you guys through the Frog Prince real quick, because that is one that I did build a side loop into to kind of mirror the variants of stories, or at least one of them that I've seen. There are multiple variants, to be fair, but there's one fairly strong split towards the end on this one. So, the Frog Prince. Perhaps you've known this one. Perhaps you've heard it. Or at least perhaps you've heard a version of it. Once there was a princess whose most precious possession... Oh, hello there, Ivory Wizard. I am experimenting with Twine indeed. I got fairy tales up. You can stop me at any point and say, hey, what if the story does something different at this section? And I will do my best to accommodate that. So I started with fairy tales because they're relatively recognizable, and probably not too difficult to imagine alternate routes to. However, I do have a different option if they are perhaps a little too comfortable. So, basically this is an experiment, we're going to see how it goes. So, I just clicked on the Frog Prince. Let's do this. Once there was a princess whose most precious possession was a little golden ball. She loved to play with it in the garden, tossing it in the air and catching it, and admiring the way it glinted in the sunlight. One day, as she did this, she tossed it too far out of reach, and it fell, plink, plunk, down a deep well. The princess couldn't climb or swim down to reach it, and began to cry, thinking her treasure was lost forever. As she wept, though, a little green frog climbed up from the well and gently called out to her. "What is wrong, fair maiden? Why do you cry so?" "I lost my treasure, a golden ball," the princess cried. "Is it the one I just saw fall into this very well? If so, I could get it back for you, but in exchange, I would have you promise me a boon." Right now, we can continue onwards. So, continue, or try to create a branch. I will say, it'll be harder to branch if we start from the very beginning, as opposed to from the end. Not much has been established so far, aside from the princess, the ball, and the talking frog. The assumption of continuing is that the princess agrees. We shall continue. What boon would that be? The princess asked. If I can get you your golden ball, you must take me up to the castle tonight. Let me sit at your table, feed me from your plate, let me drink from your cup, and let me sleep upon your pillow. Is that all? The princess thought. Aloud she said, Of course, if you can get me my golden ball, you shall have what you ask. Continuing, the frog will retrieve the golden ball. The princess has indeed promised. For now, I shall continue, but I can always go back one, and we can always backtrack a little bit. The frog hopped back into the well with a splish, and the princess waited only a little while before she saw the golden ball come sailing out of the well to land in the grass. She was so overcome with joy, she snatched it up in an instant and ran for the castle, either not hearing or not heeding the frog's cries to wait and remember her promise. If we continue from here. That night, as the princess and her father the king ate dinner, there was a knock at the castle door. The princess herself got up to see what visitor was calling so late. At first, when she opened the door, she thought no one was there. Then a voice called up to her from the step. I had to hop all the way here myself, said the frog reproachfully. Remember your promise. The princess screeched and slammed the door in the frog's face, then fled back to dinner. What was that? Said the king. Who was at the door? At first the princess wouldn't answer, but when pressed she admitted the whole story. You made a promise, the king said. Now see it through. The princess, truth be told, didn't want to let the frog into the castle, but at this she begrudgingly went to the door and allowed him inside, where he hopped at her heels all the way to the dining room. You can let him in or you can not let him in. All right. I think that's a good point. So, we're going back to that night as the princess and her father the king ate dinner. So that will be right here. All right. So, we can go ahead and change a little bit of this, or we can just go down here and say, actually, she doesn't let him in. And that will create us a little side path. So we have the regular continuation, and then she doesn't let him in. So instead of letting him in, let's see. The king expects her to go to the door to let in this guest. The princess does not want to. The princess returned to the door as the king expected, but she only opened it a crack. Go away, he hissed at the frog. Let's see. I don't want you here. You made a promise, the frog said. Oh, I keep trying to mess with Twine. This is me trying to basically make myself focus on something, at least for experiment's sake, if nothing else. You made a promise, said the frog. I don't care. It was a stupid promise. And you're a stupid frog. Let's see. There we go. That sounds fun. Yeah, one of the things that I have noticed with just trying to make Twine do things is you do very much have to have, like, single unique threads, almost. There's not really, as far as I know or can tell or have found, a thing where it's like, hey, here's a variable that you can, like, tick upwards, and it'll be taken into account across multiple threads as long as you've hit it. Nah, you gotta continue along. Just this one line. And if you want, like, if you want a branch to acknowledge something, you gotta almost copy-paste, like, anything that's gonna be the same, except for that one acknowledgement, across to a different thing. Annoy the narrator. Yep. It sounds fun, it sounds complicated. Alright, let's see. This path has the breaking of the promise. In fairy tales, that feels like something that should have a certain amount of weight. Like, that is a lesson that needs to be learned. So I think that in this path, the princess is gonna have to be, is gonna have to learn that lesson. Which usually means that if you're basically breaking against something like that, then there's probably some sort of magic that's going to, or at the very least, some sort of force in the world that's going to cause a kind of retribution to happen. Let's see. Oh, Google Forms. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I've not actually tried to mess with anything like that. Twine is my first, messing about with this sort of thing. But yeah. Let's see. Let's see, the frog slunk off of the step to the darkness. Let's return to dinner. Where's your guest? The king asked. He changed his mind, said the princess. He didn't want to be so close to the fire and out of the damp after all. I'm gonna change that to lied, the princess. We're gonna lean into that a little. Let's see. Yeah, make branching paths where one question can lead to another one. One day I'd like to go back to that and make a whole visual novel. That would be fun. That would be definitely something unique. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Even this is, the very first thing that I messed with Twine, it's got already so many branching paths, and I've only gone down, like, one basic subset of the thing that I was gonna do, and it's just, like, overwhelming. So I went, you know what, I need something simpler, I need to step back a little bit, and do something much easier. Alright, let's see. So, the princess has lied. Frog... Oops. Frog 5B. Or should it be 5B? 2. This is gonna get complicated. Google Forms, you don't even have fun visual to show what path branches to where. Oh, yeah. Yeah. At the very least, I like that Twine has all of these actual, like, arrows and little segments and pages and stuff, so you can kind of see what's going on. Kind of. Like, you can drag it around and go, oh, that's where that arrow goes. Alright, so, the princess has gotten away with a lie about the frog not wanting to be in here after all. He left. He left. It's all good. It's all fine. So, let's see. So, let's see. The basic structure of the Frog Prince is that the prince is trying to break a froggy curse upon himself, for the sake of that. And that is the way that, yeah, it has to be done. There's not really anything much about the princess's involvement. She is basically, for the most part, kind of a means to an end. It's, there's some other stuff going on. Oh, this is some goofy music. Hold on. I don't think I want Meatball Parade, thank you. Skip. Okay. The princess doesn't have a ton of agency aside from explicitly not wanting the frog to be involved. There's one or two things she can do in order to actively break the curse as it goes along, but mostly it's passive and accidental on her part. There's not really anything in the stories about the princess or the girl or whatever the case may be being cursed in turn or anything like that. It's just different. I don't know the Desmos graphing calculator, but I can fully believe that people have used it to make art. I'm pretty sure that I've seen some crazy stuff done with, like, oh yeah, this is like an actual equation that somebody graphed out. Look how cool it is. And you sit there and you go, you have made an entire spirograph. What are you talking about? What do you mean that's an equation? Some people are nuts in the best way. In the most fun and creative way possible. Okay. Froggo, Froggo, Froggo. The princess has lied. The princess has gotten away with it, it seems. The frog is out there in the dark. Now, should the frog basically sneak in? I don't think so. That won't break the curse. I feel like maybe the frog isn't just a prince in this. Maybe in this particular path, there's something more supernatural to the frog. Maybe the frog in this particular instance takes the form not of a cursed prince, but of one of those supernatural entities that you read about in fairy tales, where the moral of the story is, hey, be kind to strangers. Don't be an awful person to anyone you meet. You never know if they are actually a fairy or a sorceress or a god or something like that in disguise who will either reward you for kindness or punish you for cruelty. Maybe that's the case in this particular path. And maybe we do something with that golden ball. So, king accepted princess's excuses. It depends on the princess basically knowing about it, but that is a direction that could be taken. I think the princess needs to find out, basically what she lost. And I half wonder if perhaps that's a, ooh, I wonder if that could loop into some very different versions of the Frog Prince thing where it's not a princess that he helps. Basically have it be one of those, like, you find out what you missed out on sort of things. Okay. I think that could probably work. Excuses. Turn to their meal. Sus. Bed at night. Slept on pillows. Devoid of... Let's see. I'm gonna make 2 paths here. 5 A to B. Getting complicated with the naming conventions right here, but it's what I'm doing to try to keep track. The frog. Let's see. How shall I phrase this? But the frog went elsewhere, but the frog's story continued. Basically, it's, my thought is, what path does this go down? We'll go 5A. See. Alright, okay. So, I'm gonna try not to get too complicated, but we're already getting complicated. So let's see. I'm going to go with the Frog's Tale Continued to kind of go with what you suggested. Well, in part. Because there are versions where the frog's curse is broken not by a princess, but by an ordinary young woman somewhere in the world. Who sometimes, instead of a golden ball, usually it's something like either a sick father and she needs water from a healing spring that the frog is sitting by, or perhaps a cruel stepmother and she gets the frog's help in getting water back from the spring to the house with a bucket with a hole in it. And that's just kind of a couple of different versions. So there are other ways the Frog Prince might actually be able to get out of this. In theory, we could probably combine the two. The princess basically undergoing some punishment and also finding out what she missed out on in either path. It's just a question of who we follow. So, let's see. The frog left the grounds of the castle, knowing now that he would get no help here. Let's see. as I think we get Gregorian chants going. I've got a random playlist of Kevin MacLeod music going right now, and it's like the undefined ones, so it could get a little interesting musically speaking. The vibes are going to be all over the place. Alright. Left the grounds of the castle knowing they wouldn't get no help there. Here. Let's see. I have never seen the mountain biking emoji, no. That seems like something that has a very niche and very particular, you have to be having a very specific conversation to break something like that out. To even think of it, really. Like, you have to be explicitly talking about somebody going mountain biking before you even think, oh, I wonder if there's an emoji for that. Oh, look at this. Here you go. I'm illustrating my words. I'm adding little illustrations to the text. I mean, choose your favorite, I guess. I guess in fairness, there's like a takeoff and a landing one between the last two. So I can see those again being situational, like, oh, I've just taken off, I've just landed, I'm going, I'm coming, whatever the case may be. You can choose between them, whichever's most appropriate. The other two are really just stylistic choices. I want to say I like the one with the lighter blue wings, but that's probably just because it stands out amongst those. Oh hey, come on, there's like knitting and crochet groups. There's bound to be a situation where it's like, oh, I'm having a yarn giveaway. I'm getting rid of my stash. Yarn emoji, yarn emoji. I'm just coming up with situations where you could potentially see them actually out in the wild. There's gotta be ways. Ah, let's see. Alright, the lock with the pen in it emoji does have me at a little bit of a loss. I can't come up with a situation for that one. Writer's block? Is that writer's block? Writer's lock? It might be writer's lock. Block. Something. I could see myself using that if I'm complaining about writer's lock. I'm just gonna call it that now just because of that emoji. Alright, let's see. Let's see. Protecting written information, like copyright? I understand what they were going for. However, I respectfully disagree and think it is writer's block. I have made this decision for myself. It does not need to be correct. Yeah. Let's see, that's not quite right. Let's kind of continue this. Frog. God. Okay. 2. Alright. I don't want to do too much on this, this spring off, so I think I want to just kind of run through the story, basically bring it to a conclusion as far as that goes. Let's see. Alright, let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna mess with this a little bit. In the morning, he was still a frog. Being a princess is potent. However, there are ways to go about this. However, I'm gonna make it an actual branch path so that we can go in the morning he became a prince immediately. Do-do-do. 2, 3. God, this is getting complicated. In the morning, he had become a prince. A, 2, C, 3, B. Alright, alright. In the morning, he had become a prince. Joyfully explained. Looked like a Korok. Oh no! Little yahaha. Yeah, if I put a leaf on instead of the owl mask. I guess. Oh gosh. God, I've heard that yahaha so much. It is playing, like, perfectly replicated in my head now that you've mentioned it. I can hear that. I can hear that inside my mind's ear? I guess mind's ear. There's gotta be there's gotta be a comparison to mind's eye that just covers other senses. If you can perfectly remember a smell, do you replicate it in your mind's nose? I think that's the question. If you perfectly recall the taste of something, is it on your mind's tongue? Huh. Use Undertale sound effects to distract the viewers from how monotone this text-to-speech voice is. I wonder if that's at work in some of the videos that use the text-to-speech thing, but they have, like, music running underneath. Especially very bouncy music. Let's see. Frog should get to wear cool sun. I'm not sure how I'll work the cool sunglasses in, but we can certainly look for it. We can look for the opportunity. The problem is I am working with fully, like, words. I don't have any, like, visual media for this, so it's not like I can put a little cheeky drawing of the frog in sunglasses. Let's see, where would the frog get sunglasses? Two are wed. I'm gonna say the two are wed in the frog's own country and castle, because they go back there. 7 days and 7 nights is very, very fairy tale. Froggos! Among the guests were the golden ball. There. And when she heard the tale of let's see. I feel like in a lot of fairy tales, there's this very dramatic sort of end with, like, the jealous stepsisters or whatever, where they basically just, like, the story basically goes, and they were so jealous and so upset they just fell over dead. The end. I'm wondering if we should kind of bring that energy into it or not. It's like the frog prince has married this poor maiden who was far kinder to him and basically broke the curse. And the princess who refused the frog and refused to deal with the frog in any way finds out and is like, should she just fall over, or should something else happen to her? Or should she just go home miserable and be miserable for the rest of her life, maybe? I feel like maybe that one. But I'm willing to divert a little bit. Just for the ridiculous drama of, and she was so upset she just fainted and that was it. Because, you know, that's how fairy tales work. Alright, let's see. Golden ball, her father. I'm gonna say she grew sick with envy, because that can lead either way. I'm gonna say it is said she never recovered. That's just vague enough. You could take it either way. Cinderella ran an Italian restaurant and her name was Mozzarella. Salmonella. Oh no. Oh no. Oh boy. I mean, you can make all sorts of jokes. How many Ella words are there, really? Let's see. She worked as one of those, she worked in fumigation to get rid of mosquitoes, and her name is Citronella. Okay. And goes to Frog End. Whew. Alright, that is one path, mostly finished. However, we did have a split here where he's still a frog, and for that I'm going to bring in another fairy tale element of the Frog Prince, which is that sometimes, the ritual of the meal and the drink and the sleeping in the bed alone is not enough. Sometimes there needs to be one last finishing touch. Patella. Doctor specializing in knee problems, her name is Patella. That one's pretty good. Yeah, it sounds familiar. I can fully believe it. I'm pretty sure that is the case. For some reason, though, I see that word, and all I can think of is, like, palate, like on the roof of your mouth. It is completely different. It is spelled differently, it is said differently. There is no relation. Except my brain picks up on it and goes, hey, it looks similar enough. Is there a joke that you can make about Cinderella and, what are those little, the little, like, propeller things on the outside of certain cells? They're called flagella, I think? I can't come up with a joke for it, though. I just know that, I'm pretty sure that that's a word. Anyhow, let's see. The frog is still a frog when he wakes in the morning, and there has to be one more step. Okay, a biologist and her name was Flagella. Flew helicopters and her name was Propella. Alright, that one's a little bit more of a stretch, but I do like it still. Weather Channel anchor Cinderella named Umbrella. How did I not think of umbrella earlier? It's such a common Ella word. Let's see. Okay, okay. I think I've actually made something that will loop back into this just fine. There we go. Then we go to frog, oh god. 5A, 2C, 3B, because that loops in. More Deltarune coming out. That's not one that I've followed, though I have, I do know that there are some games I am interested in that either are coming out or have just come out recently. Some of the stuff that I've done demos for. I've actually had Grease, very much recommended to me, and to my fortune, it recently went on mega sale. So I actually do have it in my, library now. I just haven't started playing it because I want to actually finish the Plucky Squire first and get through that. Luckily, I'm pretty sure I know where the end point of that is. It's got a certain number of achievements that it can get for completing the game chapter by chapter, and there's 10 of them, so 10 chapters. I'm pretty sure I can manage that 2 chapters a video. So I will get there. I will get to Greece at some point. Alright, so I've mostly gotten that. The one thing that I wanted to do off of this, like, overall sub-branch is the princess being changed by her lying and refusing the promise. Because that is a very different path that can be taken. So, my first thought is that the princess right here and in this part of the story has been kind of defined by her golden ball, by a pretty little trinket treasure. Now, becoming a frog is a thought, but it almost feels a little too easy. The other very easy thing, to be fair, is she becomes a dragon. Now, it is a little bit less thematic in the frog sense, but it does tie into the whole golden ball thing, like, oh, she valued this material treasure more than she valued her word. What symbolically could that mean in a fairy tale sense? Maybe that's how you get dragons. Maybe it's the sort of thing that happens, and it's a emblem of greed and desire for treasure. I'm not entirely certain of that, but it is a thought. We could do a kind of she becomes this, like, froggy monstrosity, where she's not fully a frog, but she's also very visibly changed. Because fairy tales punishing someone with a kind of measure of ugliness is also a theme and a through line. Someone else let her. Oh god, it's a curse. It's kind of a curse Ponzi scheme in a way. It's how far can this spread? Okay, so like it doesn't spread just from somebody saying, no, I'm not taking you inside. It's, I promise I will. Actually, I don't need to keep my word because you're a frog. That's how everyone becomes a frog. Oh my god, it's a frog origin story. Okay. Okay, I can kind of get behind the, I can kind of get behind this. Okay. So, this is how frogs came to be. The frogs did not exist before this point. The prince that was cursed into a frog was a witch getting very creative in this bit of world building. And the princess didn't necessarily know what was talking to her. It was just a little creature that apparently is called a frog. We're not worried about that. We're not worried about that. Zero, the witch has been doing this before. All the frogs before her became frogs. Yeah, the witch has done this before. This is spread. Maybe at a certain point, once the frogs, like, lose the ability to speak, they no longer spread the curse around. But as long as you got a talking frog, yeah, if you ever meet a talking frog, either make no promises or fulfill every promise that you make it, just in case. Alright. Next morning. She found, to her shock and horror, she had become a frog. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is a standard element of curses in fairy tales. Is explicitly part of the curse means that you cannot explain the curse to anybody. You can't even tell somebody that you're cursed. It is like, there is like a physical block inside, or a magical block inside of you that prevents you from doing so. Which honestly, I think is a very handy sort of representation in stories of the kind of thing that you get sometimes when something is very important, very huge, very emotional, but also so tied up with so many other things that, like, you can't physically speak of it. It's like it thickens up in your throat and you just can't say anything about it, no matter how important it is. Because I have felt that. I have had that happen. And it's usually stuff that's like, in hindsight, yeah, probably could have made myself say things. But in the moment, it's like, oh, you can't. There is a frog in your throat. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I kind of like that so many fairy tales have that as an actual explicit element. That kind of is like, hey, no, there are situations or there are things. You are cursed and you cannot explain the curse. You can't do it. Even if it would make life easier. Even if you, quote unquote, should. You just can't. But yeah, that should just be how that is framed in real life as well. Like, I am under a witch's curse. I can't say anything. Alright, so the princess awoke and found to her shock and horror that she had become a frog. She left her bed and window. You know what? I think that she is going to try to explain, but she can't speak. The wizard has anxiety, but that's not the point. It is, though! It is! Also, wizard names can be goofy and weird and all sorts of odd, and honestly, anxiety has that X in the middle of it, and I think that qualifies it as a wizard's name. Like, hello, this is a wizard named Anxiety. He's an awful little scrungly creature, and he keeps stealing my ability to speak. Oh yeah, I've seen the medication wizard names memes. I have not seen... Oh my god, how do you pronounce that? Medication called fluoxetine? Fluoxetine? How do you treat that U and O combo? Are they distinct? Is it UO, or is it O, or like run together? Hey! My wild flailing actually got it! Oh yeah, that is a wizard's name. I think that I haven't seen one that for me beats, I think it's something like Xanax, something like that, because there's two X's. You got a front X and a back X, and it's basically symmetrical. Very wizard. fluoxetine is actually used to treat anxiety. The wizard's anxiety and fluoxetine are an ancient wizard feud. That's a story. You could write that. You could write that in a silly little parody sort of way. It's the Wizard Wars. It is outright, like, have you ever seen the series of YouTube shorts by, I think it's like Punky Doodles does animations to people's little voiceovers and things, and there's this running series of two wizards going, I cast this, and it's always the silliest, stupidest things. Like, you could outright have a wizard go, I cast anxiety, or something like that, and it would fit in perfectly. Yeah, depression isn't a great wizard name. It doesn't have that zing. That being said, I've seen, like old Victorian slang or something like that, saying, that if you're sad, you've quote-unquote got the morbs. And I think morbs is at least decent as a wizard name. You know, it's kind of a small and sad little wizard, but it's a wizard. Cast acid reflux. Yep. Yep, that would work in the Wizard Wars. Nobody wants to deal with that. Ooh, yeah, you're right. Morbs is the wizard familiar. Morbs is anxiety's familiar. I do like a sopping wet cat that follows the wizard around. It's just the most pitiful muse. Wet beast in every sense of the term, literal and metaphorical. Wet construction paper with salt on top. Alright, I want to see what the effects of that spell are. Like, is it slapping someone with the wet construction paper, just whap, right in the face? Alright, so the princess is a frog. She's under the same curse. Does she need to find, say, some sort of prince or other princess or something like that to lift it? Where should we go with this? Is she just a frog, sad and miserable for the rest of her life, or does she get a second chance in realizing, that yes, this is a curse, it could have been broken, oopsie, and she has to find somebody who is better than she was. Okay, okay. Alright, so she's gonna go out into the world. She is going to curse me with my naming and lettering system. Okay, frog. 2. Let's go. Whoop. Alright, so the princess needs to find somebody who is going to be a little kinder, a little less selfish. Where shall she go? We're in control of this. Where shall she go to find this person? She could maybe go to another castle. She could stumble upon somebody in the woods. She could, let's see. It might not be an immediate thing. It might be something she finds along the way or in the future. I guess here's another thing, because we're in control of this and we can play with it a little bit. In the base story, you of course have the prince and a princess, or a maiden or something, because, you know, they have to get married and live happily ever after, and marriage is, in these stories, very much falling in line with the you gotta be able to have the babies. However, we can mess with this. So, for the sake of this curse, is it simply that you find someone, anyone, to break it? Is it specifically you have to find a maiden? Is it a little bit less specifically, but a little less broadly than one or the other, that you have to find someone of an opposite gender or preferred gender or whatever for you? Like, what is the driving force of breaking the curse? Because if it is specifically a maiden, then I am willing to be like, she has to go find another maiden. And maybe discover a few things. Otherwise, I am also happy to be like, she has to go and find a prince or a king or something like that who will actually be good and kind and thoughtful towards her. I am good with either. I will say that I think that in order to have the taste thing, how did the prince get cursed? Well, the prince technically got cursed directly by a witch. He did not refuse a frog. It was just that the witch basically went, oh, I don't like you for this reason or that. Boom, frog. Go deal with that now. The story never really gets into it. If anything, I think there's sometimes just an implication of almost the sort of like Beauty and the Beast style. He ticked off a fairy or a witch or something and Froggo happened. There's always going to be an outside vector introducing new talking frogs to this particular ecosystem that we've made. Because occasionally and eventually, like, the frog population will lose the ability to speak and spread the curse. And so you gotta get, like, new frogs in there somehow. Sorry, new cursed frogs in there somehow, rather. You'll always get new frogs. Okay, I see that. I could see that. I was kind of assuming a slightly different setup, where occasionally you get a talking frog, but then there's also a population of regular non-talking, non-cursed frogs as well, and those non-cursed frogs are like, I don't know, ordinary descendants, I guess, of an original version of this curse. A little vague, but it's a thought in the head. Regardless. Alright. I think that I can go with the it's not confined to just maidens to break the curse. You can have multiple avenues, but you always have to do the thing. You lose the ability to speak after a while. Okay. Okay. That still does have a very limited, like, window of circumstance and situation where you only have so long after somebody's cursed, where they can still speak and therefore spread the curse by being, like, failed or refused after being promised, which is a very specific set of circumstances to begin with. It is very easy for that kind of thing to peter out without hitting too many more iterations. So I still think that it's perfectly valid to be like, yeah, and occasionally witches just kind of keep turning people into frogs for various slights. Like, it's their favorite go-to punishment, but there always has to be, like, a loophole or a way out, otherwise the magic doesn't work. So they just kind of do this whole song and dance and setup. Okay. So, the princess, I think that she probably would attempt to have her curse broken by going and finding another castle. So I think she does find, like, maybe another prince or something. So we can give her a happy ending as well in this, and basically have her learn a few things from it. So let's see. Let's see. Should we do something stupid and say that the prince that got turned into a frog had a brother? It doesn't exist in any of the original stories or anything. Probably because it would get real messy where the brother would be like, well, I guess I'm king now, and, yeah, how do you bring the defrogged prince back into that? I don't know, maybe a cousin or something. Doesn't have to be related at all, honestly. Could just be a neighbor or an old friend or something as well. Let's see. She's definitely going to a castle. That's just what she knows and expects. And thinks is required, probably. So. I'm gonna say the frog princess traveled until she came upon another castle. Let's see. I could see it. Thing is, the base has a very ritualistic sense of you must do this and that and this other thing very specifically, and it has to be willing. So it's a little bit of a selfless act in a way, but it's also like very, very specifically ingredients A, B, and C. It's one of those things that I do not know enough to say for sure, but part of me wonders if there's any sort of correlation or tie-in between the like the broader cultures that this story tended to float around, especially in that form, and maybe some kind of like marriage rituals, because it is very much coded almost as a marriage story in a way, where it's like it's a little bit of that Beauty and the Beast thing. I don't know if you've ever heard or read of it, where it was written in some way, Beauty and the Beast was, to kind of be a story about, yes, young girl who is, like, being sent away to live at this man's house, who's basically your betrothed or your new husband, whatever. Yeah, give him a chance. Sure, you might think he's a beast or ugly or something like that, but if you give him a chance, you'll find he's actually a real nice guy. And there's certain elements of the Frog Prince story that feel very similar, in the sense of, oh, hey, yes, you must let him sit beside you at the table. You must let him eat off your plate, drink from your cup, the sort of thing that, say, a married couple might do. He must be allowed to sleep in your bed, explicitly a marriage thing. And then, after all that is done, hey, you might find out that actually he's not really, like, an ugly, froggy sort of thing at all. Maybe he's actually really handsome, you never know. Maybe you'll come to like him. Maybe he'll turn out to be, like, good. And, like, noble and stuff. You don't know. Gotta give him a chance. Gotta give him a chance. There's just a little bit of that flavor in it. Just enough to make me wonder if, like, okay, were there actual, like, marriage ceremony elements that were explicitly, ceremonially, the couple eats from the same plate and drinks from the same cup? I'm pretty sure I've seen stuff about, like sharing a cup, the wedding cup sort of thing, from various places. So that's not too much of a stretch. Because if so, then that does basically recontextualize sort of the ritual aspect of this is how the curse is broken. You have to go through these very ceremonial motions and gestures as part of it. Now, to be fair, that is largely speculation on my part, but I am making my guesses. Okay, so the Frog Princess now. She's going to find another prince. The prince isn't exactly going to lose a golden ball for her to return, but he could lose something else. Waited. Let's see. Bring my sound effects back in. Plonk. Let's see. version we're telling, there's probably a few frogs who figured out what the criteria for getting the curse passed on was and went to people they hated to trick them. Oh god, but consider the risk. If I'm going down and taking you with me way, yeah. That itself is definitely a story that can be written. But also, consider the risk for a moment. If this is something that is explicitly like if they break the curse, you are bound together in essentially marriage automatically, like if that's a thing we can write into this, then what if you go to your hated rival when you're stuck in this curse, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get him, because you've accidentally, like, passed the curse on to somebody else who you were genuinely trying to get to help you, but, and you're like, okay, so this is how it works, huh? Right. Hey, rival, do these things, and I'll do this for you, and the rival's like, okay, promise, and then they actually follow through, and then suddenly your curse is broken, they aren't a frog, and you're married to them, and like, oh no. I feel like at that point you need to be going and finding a witch to find out if divorce is possible when it's, when the marriage is induced by magical curse breaking. I guess to be very fair on that line of thought, it is usually explicit within the stories that after the curse is broken, there's a proper marriage taken place. You'll still be getting revenge in the long game. I guess. Yeah. There's a lot of directions that can go. Alright, let's see. I think we can... Skippity. It's a bit better. Alright, let's see. Let's see. The princess is going to make her demands. Let's see. A, 2, B, 3. Whoops. God, the letters are getting excessive at this point. There we go. But they are keeping everything straight, so that's something. That's something. Alright. There we go. In the morning, the princess awoke to her true and original form and was able to explain everything to the prince without croaking, which, wonderful, wonderful relief to have. Alright, so the princess is back to herself. She marries this new prince, but she doesn't know yet what happened to the first frog prince. She doesn't know what went on there. So, we can give her catharsis by basically saying that she finds him and, like, figures everything out for that. I am not entirely certain. Let's see. We could kind of leave it and just go, she never finds out. She never knows, you never know if the frog prince got his curse broken, and it's left at that. Or she could find out when the neighboring kingdom is like, hey, we got our prince back. It turns out he was a frog for a while. And she goes, oh, good. I think that maybe we go for the catharsis. All right. I feel like it would be awkward for her to keep her promise to the other frog when things have gone a different direction here for her. I think that she should get the opportunity to apologize for sure, though. Like, there's no going back and fixing the promise. There is only going forward and trying to be better in the future, perhaps. Excuse me. Whoa. Oh boy. Alright. So, she's going to discover the prince of this kingdom was the very same frog she'd refused to help long ago. He'd found another to free him of his curse. Princess apologized for failing to keep her promise. Okay, so the two kingdoms grew fast in friendship and in time became one. All lived happily ever after. There we go. The end. Frog end. There we go. Okay. Alright, we have closed some loops. We have created some loops and closed some loops. So, basically, from about here, so that night, we need test from here. Alright, okay. That night, as the princess and her father the king ate dinner, there was a knock at the castle door. The princess herself got up to see what visitor was calling so late. At first, when she opened the door, she thought no one was there. Then a voice called up to her from the step. I had to hop all the way here myself, said the frog reproachfully. Remember your promise. The princess screeched and slammed the door in the frog's face, then fled back to dinner. What was that? Said the king. Who was at the door? At first, the princess wouldn't answer, but when pressed, she admitted the whole story. You made a promise, the king said. Now see it through. The princess, truth be told, didn't want to let the frog into the castle, but at this she begrudgingly went to the door and allowed him inside, where he hopped at her heels all the way to the dining room. Actually, scratch that. She doesn't let him in. The princess instead returned to the door as the king expected, but she only opened it a crack. Go away, she hissed at the frog. I don't want you here. You made a promise, the frog said. I don't care. It was a stupid promise, and you're a stupid frog. I don't want you at my table, eating my food and drinking from my cup, and I especially don't want you sleeping on my bed. You were willing enough when you wanted me to fetch your little golden ball. Leave, or I shall kick you." The frog slunk off of the step and into the darkness, and the princess returned to dinner. "Where is your guest?" the king asked. "He changed his mind," lied the princess. "He didn't want to be so close to the fire and out of the damp after all." The king accepted the princess's excuses, and they returned to their meal. The princess went to bed that night and slept on pillows devoid of frog slime, and she was very pleased with this. But the princess was changed, but the frog's tale continued. The princess was changed. When the princess awoke the next morning, she found to her shock and horror that she had become a frog. She leapt from her bed and croaked until her maids came in and found her, but when she tried to call out to them for help and explain what had happened, her voice bunched up in her throat, and she could do nothing but croak once more. The maids, not knowing she was the princess, caught her and threw her out into the garden, then began a search which was soon joined by the guards, and then the knights, and then the king himself, and all in vain, for they searched for a princess and not a frog. Meanwhile, the princess herself went miserably out into the garden and the well there, where she tested her voice and found herself able to speak clearly after all. Every time someone came close, however, she couldn't call out to them or explain herself. It only came out as croaks whenever the thought came to her. Gradually, the princess learned that the curse would not allow itself to be spoken, or for her to reveal her true identity to anyone in words. She came to suspect that the frog she had met had not been as he seemed as well, but as much as she searched, she did not see him anywhere in the garden. At that thought, she went out into the world. The frog princess traveled until she came upon another castle. Knowing what she did about her curse now, she did not bother going to the castle gate, but settled into a pond on the grounds and waited. One day, this castle's own prince was walking by the pond and accidentally dropped a ring, which rolled down the slope and fell, plunk, into the water. He cursed and reached for it, but the glint of the ring was lost to his eyes and fingers. The princess took this moment to act, and made herself known to him. "I can retrieve your ring, if you promise me a boon," she said. "Anything that is within my power you will have," he replied. The princess made her requests: to be taken to the prince's table, fed from his plate, to drink from his cup, and to sleep upon his bed. He agreed, and she dove down and found the ring in the murk, swimming easily after it and bringing it up to him. He exclaimed in joy and relief when it was placed upon his hand, then lowered his hand again for the frog princess to climb upon. He took her to his castle, set her at his table, fed her from his plate, and let her drink from his cup, and allowed no one to question these oddities. That night he laid her upon his pillow, all as he had promised. In the morning, the princess awoke to her true and original form, and to her relief was able to at last explain everything to the prince without croaking. They were wed, but she thought often of the first frog, who she had betrayed, and the guilt of it gnawed at her. Now it came to pass that a neighboring kingdom celebrated the rediscovery and marriage of its prince, and this princess and her husband were invited as royal guests to the wedding. They went, and the princess discovered that the prince of this kingdom was the very same frog she had refused to help long ago, that he had found another to free him of his curse. The princess apologized for failing to keep her promise and swore that henceforth she would better honor her word. The two kingdoms grew fast in friendship, and in time became one, and they all lived happily ever after. We go back to the start, or go back to the shelf, or we go back to about here. She was very pleased to sleep on a pillow without frog slime. But the princess was changed. We've already done that. But the frog's tale continued. The frog left the grounds of the castle, knowing now that he would get no help here. For weeks he traveled, until he reached a magical spring at the end of the world, hoping that the power there would cure him of his curse. It did not. The frog then accepted that he would never be freed, and resigned himself to his fate, until one day a maiden came with a pot and a mournful expression. She filled the pot, but discovered too late that there was a crack in it, so that all the water ran out before she could go with it. She broke down in tears, and the frog, though he had no hope for himself, was moved to comfort her. He offered to bring mud and straw to fix the pot, and when she asked how she could repay him, he wondered if this might be another chance. He asked the same boon he had asked of the princess. The poor maiden was bewildered, but agreed, and had let him hop into her apron pocket. Then she carried him and the pot of water home, where she gave the pot to her sickly father to drink, so that the magic from the spring would cure him. Then she introduced the frog as one who had helped her get the water and bring it back, and explained the reward he had asked. He was placed at their little table, given simple food from the maiden's plate and drink from her cup, and that night he slept upon a pillow of straw beside her. In the morning, he was still a frog. The frog's stomach sank, for he knew of only one other way to break the curse, should all else fail, but it could mean his life, and thus would take all his courage to request. Before that could fail him, he spoke to the kind maiden. "There is one more boon I would ask, and it must be done without hesitation," he said. "It is simply this. Take the wood-cutting axe in the corner, and with it, strike off my head." The maiden protested that she would not cause him harm, but he insisted. At last she said that if he was certain, and if he would have nothing else, she would do as he asked. So she took the axe, and with it she cut off the frog's head. And then, suddenly, from the frog's body appeared a handsome prince, alive and whole. The maiden and her father were shocked to discover the frog's true form, and he joyfully explained the curse that had been laid upon him and the means of breaking it. Then the noble maiden accept him into her house, place him at her table, feed him her food, and share her drink, and that he sleep in her bed for a night. At first he had thought that a noble maiden must necessarily be a maiden of noble birth, but with her aid he now knew that nobility was of the heart, and he was most grateful. The two were wed in the frog's own country and castle, and the feast lasted 7 days and 7 nights. Among the guests were the princess with the golden ball and her father. And when she heard the tale of the frog prince's curse and how it was broken, and saw how handsome he now was, she grew sick with envy and had to leave after only 1 day, and it is said she never recovered. As for the frog prince and his kindly bride, they lived happily ever after. Or, there's no need to go that far. In the morning, he had become a prince. And of course, the story continues from there. So, that is roughly the story of the Frog Prince, with a couple of variations along the way. Fun fact about the Frog Prince from just reading various versions of the story, I don't think I saw a single one where the curse was broken by a kiss. Even though that is the joke, even though that is the stereotype, is kiss the frog to make him a prince, there was not a single version in that entire list of fairy tales from about the Frog Prince that I read, at least, that had anyone kiss the frog. It was literally just, here is the ritualistic list of things that must be done, culminating in sleeping in the maiden's bed, and then potentially culminating in getting a head lopped off, or maybe in one version getting thrown across the wall. Oh yeah, the Disney version is broken by a kiss, or at least there's a kiss involved. But the whole thing of, oh yeah, you kiss the frog to make him a prince, definitely predates the Disney version of it. And I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I swear it's not any of the versions that are even older. So the whole, like, kiss the frog to make the prince comes from something. I don't know what. I don't know where. Like, I feel like there's gotta be some kind of, like dissertation or thesis for folklorists to write. If they haven't already, somebody might have done it. I haven't looked it up. Somebody may very well have gone, where did this little trope come from? Because there are other fairy tales and stuff where a kiss either does not come into it, where it does in the modern version, or it comes into maybe a few later versions, but not all of them. Like, what's another one? Snow White. Snow White. There are outright versions of that where a kiss is never involved. there are versions where basically the prince who finds Snow White in her, like, glass coffin in the woods is basically like, oh goddamn, let's take her back to the castle. And it's in, like, porters carrying the glass coffin with her in it. Like, one of them accidentally drops a little bit, and the poisoned apple wasn't necessarily a poison. It was the chunk got stuck in her throat and put her in this sort of suspended sleep animation thing magically. And when the coffin gets dropped or jostled, it dislodges it and she coughs it out, and then she's fine again. Like, the prince and a kiss does not come into it. There's versions of the Sleeping Beauty curse where it's, like, time-based, or some other thing happens to awaken her, and it's not a kiss. At all. The whole, like, true love's kiss to break the curse, it has to have come from something, somewhere. I do not know where that is, though. I have not done, like, a deep scholarly dive by any means into that, and I really hope that somebody has, because I want to know, basically, where did that originate? Because it has spread. It clearly has spread. It is the concept, the fairy tale concept for, like, oh, true love's kiss, and it solves all things. But where'd it come from? Because, like, all of those Disney versions absolutely play into it. The very first Disney, like, full animated feature was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it is explicitly part of the story that, you know, when the stepmother is enchanting the apple, she's reading from the book of, like, evil magic, and is like, yes, and the spell can only be broken by true love's kiss. Aha, that'll never happen. They're gonna bury her because they're gonna think she's dead. And then, of course, the prince kisses her. Sleeping Beauty by Disney. It's a kiss. The Little Mermaid by Disney is, like, explicitly part of Ursula's contract. That's like, hey, if you get him to kiss you, contract's off, you win. The frog version, the Princess and the Frog, it's a kiss. So I don't know if the idea of it existed before Disney did the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs animation, and they drew it from some other concept or part, or if maybe they originated it because it was like maybe a very clean, very family-friendly sort of way to do it, as opposed to just, they're carrying the coffin and then someone drops it and she coughs up the apple chunk and she's fine. Like, to be fair, the whole kiss thing is visually and thematically a lot more, pretty, I guess? Romantic, aesthetic, I don't know. There's an idea behind it, you know? Yeah, Disney really likes the kisses. No idea if it's just like, that's, just like the identity they came up with for it, or what, but they sure do. They sure do. Oh, but yeah, I went off on a little bit of a ramble rant there. I really like fairy tales. I like the branching paths that they take. Because one of the fun things about the site of folklore that I have linked in the description for this and that I've trolled through many times is that you can basically go to a category and you can just read story after story, version after version of the same general fairy tale. You can read, like, multiple stories of Cinderella. You can read multiple stories of The Frog Prince or Red Riding Hood or anything like that. And you can kind of see, oh, you know, this one is from, like, Germany, and it was recorded at this time. This one's from, say, France, it was recorded at this time, sort of thing, and translated and so on into English. And you can kind of see, these are very similar narratives. They are recognizably, quote-unquote, the same story. But there are enough detail differences, and there are sometimes, like, outright plotline differences. And it's really cool to kind of see how you probably started with a very similar, like, source story, and then just over time and over people telling and retelling it and sharing it and making changes, maybe little tweaks that they either preferred or that they, like, lost or added details that they wanted to or something like that, how it evolved into something very slightly different. It's just super cool. It makes me happy. I think that a lot of very, how do I say, choice-heavy storytelling styles, things like tabletop games and stuff, things that are very collaborative, really are just kind of, at the end of it, people in conversation going, hey, what if this story goes like this? And I draw the connection to things like tabletop games, but they're really not the same thing at all. It's just similar enough, though. I think that it does tap into that urge, I think, for collaborative storytelling that we seem to have. That thing where we go, hey, yeah, the story goes like this. We know the story. We know the trajectory of it. We know how it usually winds up. What if it didn't? Or what if something else happened? Or, hold on, I remember this detail from earlier. Could that be a thing now? Could that make a difference now? And if the person telling the story is open to the suggestions, then you could end up with something really different. Like, yeah, at any point you could potentially, we could potentially go back here and be like, you know, what boon is it? And instead of this whole thing, it's just a kiss. Give me one kiss. And that could be that version of the story. You know, we've got a little bit of the princess turns into the frog here. Disney did its own thing with, yeah, okay. They know the story. They know that it's a kiss within this story. But what if the kiss doesn't work like that? I think it's great how many stories branch and differ just based on a what if. But yeah. I think that we've done something here. Just a little something. And while I usually go another hour, I think that this is a decent stopping point for now. It's just a little shorter stream because it's a little different and a little weird. Who knows, maybe I'll do something like this again another time, but I think that next week I want to start a new game. I'm not quite sure yet if I want to do Mirthwood for a while or Kinseed. Both of them are fairly long form sort of games, things that would be not too difficult to just kind of stream doing. So, if there's any preference, you can go ahead and cast a vote. I haven't fully decided, and if it's left up to me, it'll either be on whim or it'll be on something like, I don't know, me flipping a coin, potentially. Or bringing in a third option that I haven't even thought of. But yeah, that's my thought, that's my idea for next week. Whatever happens, happens. We're gonna leave this here, and who knows, maybe in the future I'll do some more Twine stuff and I'll bring it back. Because I do have a totally different little story that I started. I'll just kind of show it real quick. Just go back and excuse my experiments. This is another Once Upon a Time that right now is a single line of a knight fighting a dragon and marrying a princess at the end, because that is what is done. But, there is a lot of room in this one to make a lot of changes. But for now, I'm just gonna leave it at that. We've had enough fun with fairy tales, and this is potentially a thing for the far in the future. So, yeah, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for helping me prod my way through some changes to the Frog Prince. Maybe the knight should find a princess and marry a dragon. Maybe they should. We're just gonna have to find a way to make that a branch. Okay. But for now, let's go ahead and call it there. Again, thanks for hanging out and thanks for helping. So, till next time, have a good one.